Before we start, fair warning. This is a story about how I almost passed out in a gas station bathroom and contains some crude humor. Yesterday, I reached what I'd label one of the most subhuman states a person could be in, and this experience has now been added to one of only 3 times in my entire life where I've come close to legitimately passing out. After this experience, I thought it was so funny, I decided to write it down and tell it to you guys. For context, I naturally have a weak stomach, and I'm used to days where I have to visit the bathroom way more than the usual amount. And that day, I'd already made enough trips to lose count, to the point I was suspicious of every fart in the chamber. I was driving home when I got that feeling in my stomach. The kind you can hold back for a little while, but you know the inevitable is coming. It forced me to stop at a Shell gas station on the way home. I parked my car, made sure it was locked, and rushed inside, knowing if someone was already on the toilet, I was finished. I walked into the gas station, the bell rang, and my eyes immediately locked onto the employees only door with a restroom sign on it behind the counter. I was at a point of not caring and started to move towards this door before I spotted the public restroom and changed my course. I did one of those awkward speed shuffles past the employee who was coming out of the freezer and into the restroom, and I locked the door behind me. The first thing I did was run my finger across the toilet seat because public bathrooms can be fucking disgusting, and the lighting wasn't that great. Once I confirmed the seat was safe enough to sit on, I undid my jeans and sat down. The instant I made contact, it was one of those where it just came rushing out, full liquid. Now's probably a good time to describe the restroom. It was one of those tiny, single-person bathrooms with a toilet and sink attached to the same wall. I'd call it moderately clean for a public restroom. It wasn't spotless, but not dirty enough to immediately disgust me. Not that I really cared in the moment. The exhaust fan rattled overhead like it was barely hanging on. The paint near the floor was chipped. Parts of the wall were stained and faded orange. The air was surprisingly cool compared to outside. The only thing that separated me from the rest of the store was a cheap wooden door, which I think had about a half-inch gap underneath. At first, everything was as normal as a diarrhea experience could be. It was coming out in like these rounds, and I was sitting there watching YouTube on my phone. Eventually, though, I had to put my phone down. I set it on the toilet paper dispenser, leaned forward, and I had to do a push. I kept every grunt I had during this bottled up because the last thing I wanted was the cashier or some random customer hearing me fight for my life in there. That one push was the turning point of everything. The cool bathroom air suddenly surrounded me in this unfamiliar heat. I stopped pushing immediately. Sweat started pouring off of me. I could feel my legs lose presence and give out even though I was sitting down. I began to slump over like my body suddenly forgot to support my own weight. My vision started to go dark around the edges, and I had to keep fighting myself from collapsing face first onto what I now saw was a disgusting bathroom floor. I managed to lean myself against the wall and focused on my breathing. I did the quickest panic wipe of my life and got off the toilet and sat on the floor with my back against the wall, head resting in the corner. I still needed to poop at this point, but I needed to let my body recover. I could smell piss coming from the stained walls. The short desperation I was in left me not caring. This was the beginning of multiple rounds of getting on and off that toilet, trying different positions just to keep myself from passing out or making any noise in that tiny room. There were moments where I seriously considered just sitting on the floor with my bare ass with the crap still on it. That's how fast my brain had devolved into pure survival mode like state. Sometimes I was on my knees, sometimes I leaned against the wall to straighten my body out, anything that felt like it might get the blood flowing again. Eventually I even took one pant leg completely out of my jeans, and threw one arm over the toilet dispenser, practically hugging it like it was my only comfort. My body was still burning hot, sweat covered everything. Every push burned. My mind even started wondering if the liquid coming out of me was blood. Thankfully, everything slowly calmed down. The sweating stopped, and what was left on my skin turned ice cold. I sat there on the toilet, no longer caring about the dirty wall I'd been leaning against, still letting my arms sit on the toilet paper rack. I closed my eyes and just let my body recover for a minute before pushing my leg back into my jeans, flushing the toilet and washing my face. When I finally came out of that bathroom, I felt more self-conscious than I ever had in my life. I was asking myself, did I make any noises that it didn't register that anybody in the store could hear? Did someone look through the gap underneath the door and see me lying on the floor in this desperate state? Thankfully, nobody even looked at me. I quietly walked out looking like I just finished running a marathon. My hair was a complete mess and I felt this shame lingering over me. I will say this, I'm proud of myself for not falling so low to where I actually got shit on the floor. But while I was in there, I was genuinely coming up with battle strategies, thinking to myself, if I do shit on the floor, I'm going to have to ask the clerk for a mop. And I really don't want to have that sort of like awkward social interaction. Thankfully, it never came to that. There were honestly two versions of me in that bathroom. One that just didn't care, and he just wanted to find any position remotely comfortable, and regardless of the fact that there was like shit on his ass. The other one was desperately trying to hold that monster of myself back and hold on to the last bit of self-dignity he had left. Eventually, I made it home and took a shower immediately, feeling like that was one of the lowest points in my entire life.